Welcome to Growth Strategies on Demand with AirDeck. This week's episode, we focus on scaling on a budget, featuring Jay Desai, Head of Growth at Trend. What are some top strategies to gain exposure that don't cost money?
So when you're talking about top strategies to gain exposure that don't cost money, I kind of like to reframe that a little bit more to strategies that cost little money. There are some ones that you can do for free out there. LinkedIn is a great one if you're posting on there frequently, trying to establish yourself as a thought leader. Doing a guest post, pitching that can be a really good way to get some exposure as well, especially if the websites you're going to are pretty reputable. Other things that you can really do to help gain exposure is starting your own blog, having a podcast, building an email list. And it's interesting that, when we're talking about LinkedIn, having a blog, podcast, building your own email list, doing a guest post, those all really fall under the content bubble. And the thing that kind of pulls them all together is that you're trying to figure out how to provide free value in as many places as possible. If you're the expert on the subject matter, or you're training yourself to become an expert in one area, I think sharing that knowledge can be incredibly important for everyone, and more people are going to try and come to you and look at you as the thought leader in that space. And when I think of ways to gain exposure that really don't cost that much money, doing a blog and building an email list. Content and email are two things that really don't cost that much.
What are the first steps to take when starting these strategies?
So the biggest thing when you're trying to do one of these strategies, I think we're still talking about content and the importance of content. The best thing you can do is to outline a plan and really stick to something that you're going to be able to be consistent on in terms of delivery. So if you end up going the blog route, figure out how many blog posts you can post per week, per month, whatever that number is. Podcast the same way, number of episodes. Email list, if you're doing that, you want to look at maybe the what the frequency of the emails are going to be, whether that's going to be weekly, monthly, bi-weekly, whatever that's going to be. Same thing with LinkedIn. I think the biggest thing that you can do if you're trying to take a strategy to gain exposure, like a content route or building an email list, is figuring out how often you're going to be able to deliver.
What do you think is worth investing money in for growth?
For me, the best thing that I can invest in for growth is specialists. And there are some key areas that you absolutely need to have a specialist, someone that is just focused in this area and doing it over and over again, especially when it comes to marketing. So the two things that come in mind for me are SEO experts and paid ad specialists. I've done SEO work myself. I've done content marketing. It's pretty straightforward to be able to write a blog, especially if you have experience in the subject matter. But when it comes to SEO optimization or having that experience, especially with backlinks, because they are incredibly important for search engine, you want to have someone that's an expert in that field, that literally that's their job. They have done that over and over again. They aren't really branching out and doing things like email marketing or paid ads or something else. They're really focusing on SEO. Another one is a paid ad specialist. This one's really hard because I myself have personally tried to do Facebook ads. I've tried to run LinkedIn ads, and it really doesn't work out if you're trying to juggle a bunch of other tasks. First of all, for that. The second reason is that you really need to understand how Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter or Google, how these advertising platforms work. And it really doesn't happen if you are the only one in charge of that. Maybe you have a smaller budget, but when you go to an ad specialist, typically they've worked with a ton of different companies, at least more than just your single company, and they've had experience spending a lot of money on ads, so they really know what works well. Another thing that I think is really important is generating reviews. Review sites are huge, especially when you're starting a new business. Review sites usually have more pull on search engines than your own website is going to have. So it's really important to get yourself on there. Things like G2, Capterra if you're software, G2 is great for software, Trustpilot. If you're building your own business, brick and mortar, even like Yelp, get on there because those places are going to help to give you a lot more exposure because they've done the search engine optimization work. They've gotten the audience, and you're just basically putting yourself on there and putting yourself in front of that audience.
What tools do you recommend for growth?
If you're trying to grow really fast, I think the most important things are having the right marketing tool set. So MarTech has become a huge industry, huge segment, really important for business. And I think there's a couple of key tools that you want to be able to use to have high growth. The only way you can have high growth really is by moving very fast. You're constantly testing out new ideas, seeing what works, continuing to build and grow, and just kind of figuring out what sticks for the most part. So when I look at that in terms of tools, I'm looking at tools that are going to help me amplify my message. So things like a social tool that's going to allow me to post on multiple platforms. Maybe it allows me to post on my blog, multiple places. Analytics tools are incredibly important. Make sure you have Google Analytics, Google Tag Manager, all of those things on there. If there's any other specific ones, maybe Mixpanel or things like that, Optimizely, look into those tools. And also tools that allow you to be agile, that allow you to change and edit things really quickly. Some of my favorites for some of these tools are Unbounce, helps you build landing pages really quickly. Heap is a great complementary analytics tool to Google Analytics. It tracks a lot of stuff, especially for funnels. So if you're testing a lot of stuff really fast, that's a really great tool to use. Another tool that I really love that I've come across recently is StoryChief. Basically what it does is you put together your blog post, your content, and then you're able to publish it to multiple platforms with a single click and even send it out as an email. So that's really great. Webflow is an incredible tool as well. I highly recommend building your website on there. It's just a really great way to quickly make changes to your website, and it has a lot of customizability. There are a lot of Webflow experts as well. But when it comes down to it, it's really finding the tools that will let you create an MVP version of what you want to do without having to spend a ton of money. And make sure, once again, reiterating, have that review process. Get on those review platforms. Those are great for growth.
What is the importance of analytics when scaling?
So the importance of analytics when scaling for me, I think they are very important. It's extremely important, but what I would do is focus on 2 to 3 key metrics. Don't go out and track everything because the idea here is that you want to make high growth and fast growth. So track a few areas that you know that are really going to move the needle for the business, whatever that happens to be. So personally, for me, in my business at Trend, we work with brands, so we get a lot of brand applications. And so for me, any way I can drive that brand application number up or even get them into the platform faster, working on influencer campaigns, it's incredibly important. So focus on those 2 to 3 key metrics. And also, analytics are great, but don't forget to be able to trust your gut as well. So, you might want to think that, hey, I need to find some analytics on this to know whether it's worthy to test or not. If there's an idea that you're really itching for, go ahead, test it out, see how it goes. But I think the most important thing is understanding when something is not working. And that's what those key metrics are for. So that way you're able to still trust your gut. You're able to go out and test ideas. But if it doesn't work, you know when to stop it. And if it does work, that's great. You're going to help to scale your business even faster.
Thank you to our guest on this week's episode. If you want to be featured, contact sales@airdeck.co with a brief explanation of why you think you'd be a good fit for the series. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Growth Strategies webinar series brought to you by AirDeck. Stay tuned for more episodes coming soon, featuring top sales and marketing professionals around the world.